Now we will talk about stress and counseling. So according to Russ Newman, that research shows that attending to the things that stress employees, feeling like they aren't able to influence decisions or that they have little or no control over their own schedules, goes a long way in creating an atmosphere that is less stressful, has less absenteeism, and allows greater productivity. So that means that this research highlights the importance of employee empowerment and reduces stress and improve workplace outcomes. So that means that giving more control over the work environment reduces stress and improve productivity. And next is, according to Bruce Cryer, Roland McCarthy, and Doc Schilder, that transforming your actions to stress is the first and most essential ingredient of effective leadership, as essential as skill as hiring, firing, strategy, development, and fiscal responsibility. So this emphasizes that emotional intelligence is crucial leadership skill, just as important as traditional business skills. So that means that if a leader who can manage their own stress and reactions create a calmer, more positive environment. In essence, transforming your reactions to stress is a fundamental leadership skills that allows you to lead effectively and build a strong team. So the next one, we will define what is stress. So stress is a term applied to the pressures people feel in life. So it can be physical, emotional, or mental. Anything that makes you feel pressures, overwhelmed, or anxious can trigger stress. So stress is very familiar to us. So each one of us experience stress. So there are symptoms or causes of stress. So stress can be caused by the symptoms like headaches, fatigues, or trouble sleeping. It can also impact your moods and relationships. And also, stress can be caused by a wide range of factors, both big and small. Either it's about conflicts with the families, conflicts with the friends, conflicts with the relationships or romantic relationships, and also financial stability can be source of stress. So moving on, we will talk about the figure 15.1, which shows typical negative symptoms of unmanaged stress. So as you can see, there are three categories, such as physiological, psychological, and behavioral. So unmanaged stress can be manifest physically, such as ulcers, high blood pressures, headaches, and etc. It can also manifest emotionally, such as depressions, burnout, and moodiness. And the last one, which is it can affect with behaviorally, such as aggressive smoking, um, performance problem, and absenteeism, especially in work. So the next one, which is the extreme product of stress, which is the burnout. It is a situation in which employees are emotionally exhausted, become detached from their clients and their work, and feel unable to accomplish their goals. So burnout is serious and can lead to health problems and decreased productivity due to work overload. So another product of stress, which is the trauma, it causes the following threat of one's security. So there are three types of trauma. First is workplace trauma, secondly of survivor sicknesses, and the third one is workplace violence. So workplace trauma, this could include witnessing a violent incident, experiencing a serious accident, or being subjected to bullying or harassment. And the second one is of survivor sicknesses, which is the emotional toll on employees who remain after a layoff. It a mix of guilt for surviving while others lose their jobs, anxiety about job security, and stress from increased workload. And the third one is workplace violence. Any act of physical or verbal abuse, intimidation, or threat that occurs in the workplace. It can range from verbal harassment, physical assault, and even homicide. Next is figure 15.2, which is this diagram shows a model of workplace stress. It illustrates on how individual differences and stressors from work and personal life affecting employees and leading to either positive and negative stress. So these different types of stress have short-term and long-term consequences, both the individual and the organization. Now we will talk about the figure 15.3, the typical causes of stress on the job. First is work overload. So work overload, if the employees is kanang a lot of activity to do, so they can be exhausted and burned out. And next one is time pressures. Poor quality of supervision, insecure job climate, lack of personal control, inadequate authority to match responsibilities, role conflict and ambiguity, differences between company and employees' values, changes of any type, especially when it is major unusual, frustration, of course, it can be causes of stress on the job, technology. So next is figure 15.4, which is stress and performance, depicting two results. So this graph shows two different relationships between stress and job performance. So as you can see in the graph, the curve A and the curve B. So the curve A, shows an inverted U shape, which is the job performance increases when levels become too high. While the curve B, as you can see, it shows a negative relationship, which is the job performance decreases as stress increases. So next, which is the type A and type B people. So this describes two personalities types. So a type A person might, for example, a type A person might aggressively pursue a promotion, constantly checking their emails, and getting frustrated by traffic jams. While type B people or person might work steadily towards a goal without feeling pressures to rush, and then handle a traffic delay with more patience. So that was one of the example of type E and type people. So there are three approaches of stress management. First, prevent. Second, escape. And the third is cope. So these steps are aimed to reducing or eliminating stressors for employees. Other employees can escape stress by requesting job transfers, finding alternative employment, taking early retirement, or acquiring assertiveness skills that allow them to confront the stressor. Several approaches also exist for coping with stress. So next is involve cooperative efforts among employees and management and may include, which is the social support, relaxation efforts, personal wellness programs. And the last one, we will talk about the figure 15.5, which is common personal strategies for managing stress. First, strategies resist working long hours or accepting overtime. Second, volunteer for flex time or other alternative work schedules. Third, identify the people who cause stress and avoid them. Fourth, maintain a healthy diet and eat regularly. Fifth is obtain regular exercise and get enough sleep. 6. Avoid procrastination. 7. Set reasonable goals for yourself. Develop a simple methods of organizing things and adhere to it. Step back from stress and decide whether you need to fight every battle. Consult with a trusted friend for becoming involved in new activities. Develop a balance of physical, emotional, and spiritual capacities. And the last one, which is find or create opportunities to laugh. So the next slide, which is tackle the second reporter, which is Miss Pacolba, will discuss it.
Tackle about employee counseling. So what is counseling? It is a discussion with employee of a problem that usually has emotional content in order to help the employee cope with it better. Counseling seeks to improve employee mental health and well-being. Here are the three characteristics of people with good mental health. First, feel comfortable about themselves. Means are not bowled over by their own emotions, by their fears, anger, love, jealousy, guilt, or worries. Can take life disappointment in their stride, have a tolerant, easygoing attitudes toward themselves as well as others, can laugh at themselves, neither underestimate nor overestimate their abilities, can accept their own shortcomings, have self-respect, feel able to deal with most situations that come their way, get satisfaction from simple everyday pleasures. The second one, feel right about other people, are able to give love and to consider the interests of others, have personal relationships that are satisfying and lasting, expect to like and trust others, and take it for granted that others will like and trust them. Respect the many differences they find in people, do not push people around and do not allow themselves to be pushed around, can feel they are a part of group, feel sense of responsibility to their neighbors and others. The third one are able to meet the demands of life, do something about their problems as they arise, accept their responsibilities, shift their environment whenever possible, adjust to it whenever necessary, plan ahead but do not fear the future, welcome new experience and new ideas, make use of their natural capacities, set realistic goals for themselves, are able to think for themselves and make their own decisions, put their best effort into what they do and get satisfaction out of it. What is the need for counseling? The need for counseling arises from a variety of employees' problems, including stress. When this problem exists, employees benefit from the understanding and guidance that counseling can provide. For example, one employee feels insecure about retirement. Another employee is hesitant to take the risk required by a promotion, and those cases growing on the job. The third employee may become unstoppable in the job. In all cases, counseling is a necessity. So what counseling can do? First, advice. Many people view counseling as primary and advice-giving activity, but in reality, this is only one of several functions that counseling can perform. To give useful advice requires a counselor to make judgment about a counselor's problem and to lay out a course of action. Second, reassurance. Counseling can provide employees with reassurance, which is a way of giving them courage to face a problem or a feeling of confidence that they are pursuing a suitable course of actions. Reassurance is represented by such counselor remarks as you are making good progress. Third, communication. Counseling can improve both upward and downward communication. In an upward direction, it is a key way for employees to express their feelings to management. As many people have said, often the top managers in an organization do not know how those at the bottom feel. Fourth, release of emotional tension. An important function of nearly all counseling is release of emotional tension. This release is sometimes called emotional catharsis. People tend to get an emotional release from their frustration and other problems whenever they have an opportunity to tell someone about them. Fifth, clarify thinking. Clarified thinking tends to be a normal result of emotional release, but a skilled counselor can aid this process. In order to clarify the counselor's thinking, the counselor serves as an aid only and refrains from telling the counselor what is right. Last one is reorientation. Another function of counseling is reorientation of the counselee. This is more than mere emotional release or clear thinking about a problem. Reorientation involves a change in the employee's basic self through a change in the basic goals and values. Types of counseling are directive counseling, non-directive counseling, and participative counseling. So the directive counseling is the process of listening to an employee problem, deciding with the employee what should be done, and then telling and motivating the employee to do it. Next is non-directive counseling. Non-directive or client-centered counseling is at the opposite end of the continuum. It is the process of skillfully listening to and encouraging a counselee to explain troublesome problems, understand them, and determine appropriate solution. It focuses on the counselee rather than on the counselor as judge and advisor. Thus, it is client-centered. The last one is participative counseling, also called cooperative counseling, is a mutual counselee relationship that establishes a cooperative exchange of ideas to help solve a counselee's problem. It is neither wholly counselor-centered nor wholly counselor perspective and values to problems. Used by professionals. Professional counselors usually practice some form of non-directive counseling and often accomplish 4 of the 6 counseling functions. Limitations. With all its advantages, non-directive counseling has several limitations that restrict its use at work. First of all, it is more time-consuming and costly than directive counseling. Since just one employee with one problem may require many hours of a counselor's time, the number of employees that a counselor can assess is limited. The manager's counseling role. Excluding reorientation, the counseling functions usually can be performed successfully by skilled managers. They will at times perform all 6 counseling functions. On other occasions, if professional counseling services are available and a problem is significant, they will and should refer employees to the professional counselors. The point is that when counseling services are established, managers must not conclude that all their counseling responsibilities have been transferred to the counseling staff. A contingency view. A manager's decision to use directive, participative, or non-directive counseling with an employee should be based on an analysis of several contingency factors. It should not be made solely on the manager's personal preference or past experience. However, the manager's knowledge and capacity to use a variety of methods are clearly critical factors in choosing how to proceed. Counseling method. In non-directive counseling, the employee primarily controls the direction of the conversation and does most of the talking. In directive counseling, the counselor primarily controls the direction of the conversation and does most of the talking. In responsibility for solution status of participants, the employee and the counselor are on the equal level. In direct counseling, the counselor is at least implicitly superior to the employee. In role of participants, the employee is psychologically independent as a person, choosing a solution and growing in ability to make choice in the future. In directive counseling, the employee is psychologically dependent on the counselor, whose role as a problem solver tends to limit the employee's personal growth. Emphasis placed psychological adjustment is a paramount with deep feelings and emotional problems accented. In directive counseling, solution of current problem is emphasized with feelings and emotions often ignored. Figure 15.10 Iceberg Model of Counseling, in which they recognize that sometimes more feelings are hidden under the surface of a counselee's communication than are revealed. For this reason, they constantly encourage the counselee to open up and reveal deeper feelings that may help solve the employee's problem.